Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It means a lot that you're here in this windowless room on this beautiful fall day, so you all must really love art because you're in a room with no windows, but we have this beautiful show to look at. So thank you again for coming. First of all, I want to introduce myself. My name is Priya Green, and I am faculty here at the Art and Design Department. I'm fairly new. I started last year, and I have just stepped into the role of gallery director for this space. So this is all kind of brand new for me. But I'm also the curator for this exhibition, and I'm so very excited to present these 5 artists and their fabulous, stunning work. I think, you know, what we have here is just amazing. And we have 4 of the artists here with us today that are going to be talking more about their work. And we also have 2 of my curatorship students who are going to be moderating the panel discussion between the artists. So I just want to briefly introduce them, and then I'm going to pass the mic on to our students who are moderating. And after the panel discussion, we will open up to the audience for Q&A if anyone else in the audience has questions, all right? So our 2 students are Waika Galarza Rodriguez and Emily Lopez Iglesias. And the artists that we have joining us tonight are Billie Lee, Mark Guglielmo, Lisa Iglesias, and Andrae Green, who also happens to be my husband, okay? So be nice to him. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic on to Waika and Emily, and they will take it away.
Thank you. Okay. So we're just going to read off the biographies for each of the artists. So our first artist we have is Andrae Green. He was born in Kingston, Jamaica. Andrae Green's artistic sensibilities were shaped by the comic books of Marvel and DC, the only accessible art sources in the impoverished neighborhood where he grew up. Economic hardship and social upheaval, compounded by the threat of violence, led Green to take refuge in art, school, and church. This sparked a deep inner world he explored by creating comic characters that embodied the hope and freedom he yearned for. Green has represented Jamaica in the Beijing Biennial multiple times and also represented the U.S. in Paris at the Carousel du Louvre. He has participated in numerous group exhibitions at renowned institutions such as the Maddox Gallery, Los Angeles, the Investec Cape Town Art Fair in South Africa, the Stephen Thomas Museum of Art in Georgia, the University Museum of Contemporary Art, at UMass Amherst, and the 2020 Vision exhibition at the Southampton Art Center, which was co-presented by the Flag Art Foundation and the New York Academy of Art.
The next artist that we are presenting is Billie Lee. Billie Lee, working at the intersect of art, pedagogy, and social challenge, Billie's art practice includes painting, video, and performance. Also, documentary film projects such as Moving Home, that premiered at the Hawaii International Film Festival in 2012. She received her BFA from the Rhode Island School of Design and MFA from Yale University. Her recent reflection on race and critical discord in MFA education can be found in On Performing the Critical, in the Ontology Beyond Critic, Contemporary Art in Theory, Practice, and Instruction. Currently, she is an assistant professor at the Hartford Art School, as a doctorate candidate in American Studies at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. Billie's dissertation project examines the intersection of race, identity, and cultural politics in contemporary art and education.
The next artist we have is Lisa Iglesias. Lisa Iglesias was born and raised in Queens, New York, and received her BA from Binghamton University in 2001 and MFA from the University of Florida in 2006. She has attended residencies at such institutions as Altos de Chavon in Dominican Republic, the Neimarka Museum in Finland, the Provincetown Fine Arts Work Center in Massachusetts, and Bemis Center of Contemporary Arts in Nebraska, among others. Lisa has exhibited nationally and internationally at various spaces, including El Museo del Barrio in New York, the Queens Museum of Art, also in New York, and the Orlando Museum of Art in Florida. She works both individually as well as collaboratively with her sister, Janelle, under the name Las Hermanas Iglesias. Lisa is currently an associate professor and chair of the Art Studio Department of Mount Holyoke College and spends time between Massachusetts and New York.
Our last artist is Mark Guglielmo. Mark Guglielmo, born in 1970 in New York City, is a contemporary art resident. Is a contemporary artist residing and working in Western Massachusetts. He spent 20 years as a rapper and music producer, aka Vesuvio, in the Los Angeles and New York hip-hop communities. He rapped with Eminem on the top 10 hit Green and Gold, shared the stage with KRS-One, Biz Markie, and the Black Eyed Peas. As a visual artist, Guglielmo used portraiture. Minds the human condition, centering on underrepresented subjects, among them his Southern Italian immigrant ancestors, to challenge the Western canon to include images of those who have been heretofore, omitted. Solo exhibitions have been organized at the Vermont Center for Photography, the Loveland Museum in Colorado, Boston's Villa Victoria Center for the Arts, Wilston, their Field Academy, and twice at APE Gallery in Northland, Massachusetts.
So thank you all for being here tonight. We love your work, and we're so excited to have a conversation with you to find more about your work and yourselves as artists. So let's get started with this question. So you guys have a microphone that you guys can share, and we can just go down the line. So the first question is, can you all share something interesting about yourself or your work that the audience may not know?
Wow. Where do we start? I'll share a little bit of context about the video piece in there that might be useful. The video work in the smaller gallery there is called Montage, parentheses, It Was Just a Dream. And it's shot from travel footage in North Korea. I visited North Korea in 2008. And it's footage that I've been working with since then. I just keep revisiting it and recycling it, and so Montage really just comes out of like numerous versions of this video that I have. And a common question that I get is if my family is North Korean, and the short answer is no. My recent members of my family and myself are from South Korea, but I also make it a point to point out that the division of North and South Korea is an arbitrary division that was made in 1945, and so my attempt in kind of traveling to that part of the land and the country, was an attempt to reconnect with a broader notion of ancestry and lineage that was inaccessible to me, And the video just really explores the disillusionment that comes with having to go through channels of tourism and statecraft and political ideology that has become this kind of carnival when you're just trying to find out a little bit about where you come from. I'll start with that.
Thank you.
It's for me, these works here are somewhat of an attempt for me to go back to my grandma's house in Queens, in Flushing, Queens. It was the place where I just felt the happiest. We would go every Sunday, and just the way my grandmother made community and family and the way she loved was so impactful that it always saddened me that the whole world didn't know her. And so, here's this woman who had 11 kids, who dropped out in the 8th grade, who was a painter and went back to community college in her 60s and took a painting class, and then for the rest of her life she painted on the kitchen table. And so just having watched her honor who she was despite kind of what society thought she should do, what Italian-American culture thought she should do, inspired me to walk my own path. And first it was hip-hop, and now it's visual art. And so these works are really about wanting to go to a museum, wanting to go to spaces that I hold dear, and to see her on the wall, to see people like her, to see people, working class people, people who I don't see very often on the walls in museums. More and more, thanks to artists of color mostly. But this is my attempt really just to try to hang out with my grandma. Cool.
Queens, yes. Queens.
I'm the odd one out.
My station is 179th Street, Hollis, Queens, and a lot of the work that was made here for the show here, I made in collaboration with my mom, who surprised me and came today, with our good family friend Agatha. So it's so lovely that they are here, and the traces of Bodhild's movements can be visualized in the works on panel on that back wall. So that's something that may not be visible right away, is sort of like how the traces or the physical movements of family might be reflected in an artwork. So that's she's here. Thank you.
Well, how can I follow that? I was thinking a lot about what Mark said, and for me, a fun fact that a lot of people don't know, all these works are about the water, have water in it, and I have a deathly fear of drowning. And partly it's because my dad, for his life while he was alive, used to try to teach me how to swim, and it didn't take. I almost drowned like 3 times. So part of this thing with the sea and remembering the sea and overcoming the sea is catharsis, and me like finding my own way to like control it in a sense. So, fun fact.
Thank you.
All of you approach the concept of family, lineage, and ancestry differently within your works. Can you talk about how you do this and why these themes are important to you as artists?
Great question. I feel like there are certain things that continue to haunt us as artists, as human beings, but there are things that even if you think you're past it, or you think, you want to move beyond it, they just keep coming back. They just keep coming after you in one way or the other. And I think for me, this question of how do we connect with the past that feels irretrievable or feels out of reach is a question that's been haunting me in my practice. And I think over the years, working with the absences themselves has been the practice, has emerged as the practice. And so working with the fragments, working with ruins, working with really whatever you're given, and then to make the connections yourself, I think is the work of what historians do. It's the work of any artist, and it's the work of meaning making. And so, and I think through that, there's something else that emerges that feels real rather than something that is constructed as being historically accurate. I think we can question what history is, but I think the work that we do and the meaning making that we do to connect to certain members of our family is the way through. It has been the way through for me.
Yeah, I feel like for me, I'm trying to wrap my arms around not just the journey of my family, I'm definitely trying to do that, but also just the journey of my people. As you were saying about history, it's interesting because it seems like history, it really depends on who you ask or what book you read about it, because you can find truth in all these different places. And so for me, it's about how do I tell my truth as it relates to the journey of my ancestors and my journey? How do I tell that in a way that allows for awarenesses that I haven't found in my family? I feel like my family gave me so much wisdom, but there were big pieces missing that I have had to find myself, that people lived their whole lifetime and weren't able to solve, like trauma, things that we pass on unconsciously, right? And so how can I live my life in a way that honors where I came from while transforms a lot of the suffering and presents a body of work that can allow for conversations about our journeys to inform the choices we make now? So while I look back, that's not what I'm doing. I'm using the journey to try to inform the present, to try to bring to the table a more real, honest conversation about the choices that Italian Americans made around race, around assimilation, around class, that are fraught in so many ways. I know that in my own community, the second you bring that kind of stuff up, people don't have the tools to conversate about it. They don't want to own kind of some of the choices that were made. So for me, it's almost like without words, I can access these kind of histories and these stories that are still living out today.
When I think about the why and wherefore of the work that's here and connected to family, it is a lot about making the invisible visible and thinking about touch and the body, about, yes, cell populations and DNA and how that can be passed on and how we carry the cell populations of our grandparents and how we're connected with our siblings, but then also, on that level, but then also how we inform each other through touch and through caregiving. And so the three humans that I've given birth to, how I've shared my body with them, they're like how indelibly they are connected with me, and how my body is, yes, my own, but also I loan it out all the time and gets constantly molded and carved and touched on a daily basis. So some of it is about that too, like how our relationships are mediated through touch.
Wow. For me, family is, I think, let me start over. I think the journey of an artist is to go within, and the more you try to get better at your craft, the more inward you go. And for me, I hit a profound milestone when I had my son, and I instantly saw my replacement on the earth, and he was better than me, he looks better than me, he's more suave, he's more this, he's more that, because he has most of prayer in it. So so for me, it hit me like I need to figure out like who am I, and that made me sit and reflect about my dad, and then who I am, who do I want to be, and for me, I just want my work to carry on the best of me and the joy that I try to exude all the time. And try to give that to my son, to pass it on. Part of my early artist statements was like, I wanted to leave like little breadcrumbs, so that maybe he could look back and see it. So it's about father and son, grandfather, father, son, it's that circular thing. And the bodies move and try to indicate that no matter what's around you, you can kind of, once the mind is free, the body is free. And so that's my whole family thing,
Thank you. The next question we have is, who or what inspires you the most? How do you mine that inspiration for your art making process?
Maybe just going along with what I was saying, I was just revisiting one of my favorite authors and thinkers, Gloria Anzaldúa, and she has this phrase of reaching through wounds to get to the healing work, or to get to, or to engage with your practice, basically, and I find that phrase a constant inspiration. Of how we need to not pull away from our wounds, but to reach through them to actually get through to the other side, and to work with the material that comes through engaging with the suffering, engaging with the trauma, engaging with all of that could be quite scary. But there's so much healing and personal and collective healing that can come from that.
I agree. I feel like my mother is a big inspiration for me, and she passed away when she was only 28, and I was 2. And she was an artist also, and I have just a few works of hers survived, and they're beautiful. And you can see that it's the budding of a talented artist, and the fact that she didn't really get a chance to explore it has always been an inspiration for me to really go deep within, find out, okay, now I know I'm an artist, and I've always known that really on some level, but how then do I honor that? What work do I make? How do I engage my healing journey, where for me the art is not the healing process. The art is a reflection, it's almost like an expression of the work that I do on myself. This is a place where I can kind of share the harmony, share the beauty. I think we have so many examples around us of the horrors of what humanity is capable of. And for me, it's been a gift, honestly, to have life so that I could work on healing my own stuff, not completely, but at least have tools, and then to try to use my art as a vehicle for an expression of some of the things that I feel and know and believe, and to also ask questions.
Yeah, I got to second that for the mamas. My mom, who immigrated from Norway out of her entire family, and is the one person in her family from a remote farming village in the mountains of Norway to come to the United States, and then met my father from the Dominican Republic, from the capital, and then settling in Queens and raising my sisters and I. I very much consider myself full of those sort of influential forces of having 3 sisters, of having my parents immigrate, of having family members in other spaces, and then growing up in Queens. Like, all of that is really indelibly linked with all the choices I make and how I live this life. And so I mean, this is, my mom showed up here. It's a surprise. She drove from Queens. It's like, that's Bo. So I would say that's my answer, is my major influence. And also the reason why I want to keep on making is like having gone through a lot of different changes in life and trauma, and yet maintaining a buoyancy and curiosity. It's amazing, and something that is like you have to really try to do and can keep it on. So yeah.
Wow. I want to just take a page out of Lisa's book. I'm very much inspired by my dad. Part of my artistic journey, well, most of it is to kind of, in a sense, fulfill what I feel like he didn't get to do. Because he started working at 14, and at 55 had a heart attack in his sleep. So he was working his whole life. He was the last of 9, put his whole older siblings through school and stuff, and literally provided for his whole family, and then passed away. And funny enough, my mom was so grief-stricken, she had a dream when he died, and she was like, in the dream, she saw him, and she was like, what happened? Why did he go? And he was like, I was tired, you know? So for me, part of this whole artistic journey, and to kind of prove to my son that follow your passion, is to kind of pick up that kind of mantle that I feel like my dad didn't get to have his own life, you know. But that being said, I'm also inspired very much by art. I love figurative art. I love abstract art. I love everything. I love the color, the movement, the freedom you feel. I feel like art can do things that politics can't do, that religion can't do. It can take us places that we don't even know ourselves. So those are my 2 motivating things. And Rubens. I love Rubens, Peter Paul Rubens. This whole body of work was inspired by The Fall of the Damned. The first time I saw that painting was in a book, and it literally blew me away in the library in Jamaica. And from ever since, it's been in my head 20 years from now on. I'm trying to be better than Rubens.
So you have each talked about your relationship with your families, your journey, seeking information about your lineage and your ancestry. Can you talk about your art-making process, and for the artwork that you guys presented here in the exhibition, is there anything interesting that you can share about these particular works and how you came to make them?
Something about my process, I think I would say that I'm extremely messy. Like, I think I was telling my friend this, that if the room is too neat, like, nothing's gonna get done. Like, I have to reach a certain level of mess where I think I'm like completely immersed in a different world. And then something starts to happen. Like, the work takes on its own logic. And I think sometimes it takes a while to get there. It's hard to do in short increments of time when your life gets busy. But yeah, I actually tried to be more messy, you know, in order to like access the kind of environment that I need to be in. And so when I revisited the collages in there, it wasn't like something wasn't happening for a while, because I was just kind of revisiting old material collected over 20 years, and once, you know, things accumulated enough, I feel like it was starting to direct where it wanted me to go, and sometimes you forget, like I forgot about that, and I was just like, oh, maybe this work is done, maybe I don't have anything, you know, more to say about this, but then it just took a little bit of time to create more mess.
For me, I usually have to find an image. I'm working from archival photographs on these, and I have hundreds of them. Some are family heirloom kind of stuff. A lot are from archives. But, you know, I started with this one here, was the first one I made, and it's actually a mother and daughter who had just arrived on Ellis Island from Italy, and it's an image that there was a detention cell behind them, because they would separate immigrants based on, I think, if certain people were sick or had certain issues, they weren't going to let them in yet. They would categorize them, and so there was a fence behind this young daughter and mother. And for me, it's a challenge of how can I take this small digital black and white image and make it alive? How can I bring these stories to life, these souls who lived and died, and there's this little tiny proof that they lived. I mean, no one else knows they lived, right? And so I want to make them larger than life. I want to amplify them, to take them to places they never went during their lifetimes. You know, a guy like this guy, he was building the 6th Avenue L in Manhattan. That no longer exists. This guy was making sandwiches on New Year's Eve, and this was like right around 1950. And like the woman towards over here was working the fields in southern Italy after all the men had left the town. The women were left. They had to do the farming, raise the kids, fix the houses. Like the men were gone. So for me, artistically, it says these people and these stories and these souls who are now gone speak to me. How can I lift them up in a way that they sing? You know, talking about art as an inspiration, the museum, the Met specifically, was a place we went regularly, and seeing the art on the wall it gave me a reason to believe that there was goodness on the planet, that there was magic here, and that art was a key venue for that. And so for me, it's like, how do I join that conversation, the art that still speaks to me? How do I make work that can sing with those voices?
When I hear the question about process, so much of the work that I'm showing for the show is about the materiality and the process, and wanting to reveal that, like make it be really visible, not to create an image that was opaque or seemed like it just always existed, but that reveals itself very vulnerably, that you can see how it was made, or see that a human made it in all of its sort of imperfection and fingerprints and messy, gunky stuff. I have some curiosity about then using those as matrices to make other images, like what would happen if they go through the press. And so I'm also interested in that these works might have then a second life and change again. So a lot of times older work in my studio might get collaged together or painted over to turn into something else. And so a lot of the works, for example, on paper have a painting on the back of it that might glow or otherwise provide a texture, so that they accrue like some life stuff on them, that they're crusty and show their making. And so the process becomes really a part of the sort of idea behind them, as well as the, A to B.
Process is an interesting question for me. It ebbs and flows. Right, well, I'll speak for these works and then just talk what I usually do. For these works, especially as really trying to capture freedom or elation or like triumph over circumstance. And it's an iterative process. So each time like this big one, so I'd take, each figure is like reproduced in like its own small thing. I'll sketch it out because I don't want the big painting when I come to a larger piece for it to feel stiff and worked, like I don't know what I'm doing. So it's a lot of practice. It's like dancing. I kind of see painting as a dance because it is with the body, it is with the hand. and you're using an instrument, right? I used to play music a lot. I used to practice for like 6 hours. So part of that is in it too. But then the collage elements like the Nigerian batik that came about from a trip to Atlanta, a collector of mine, I saw his collection, a huge collection of African art. And then I felt great affinity. I never felt such a strong affinity to the diaspora until I saw it. And I realized like, maybe I'm tapping into like this kind of group mind, this kind of African sensibility. And I was talking to Lisa and saying like, the more I go a deep dive Instagram, I'm realizing like, yeah, we all are kind of tapping into that sense with that kind of pinkish magenta. It's in vogue right now. You see it in Basel everywhere. So for me, basically, I start with a feeling. It's feeling transports to an idea. Idea gets like broken up into a sketch or sketches, and then I probably do a small painting to kind of figure out where I'm going before, and then I do a painting, you know.
So you can actually keep the microphone because the next question is directed towards you. So I see most of your pieces depict the figures in movement. What made you choose this narrative as part of your work, and what is the message you want to portray?
Oh, it's very simple. The whole Diverse series started while we're in COVID in lockdown, and I felt like I wanted to give the world an antithesis to that. So if you can't move, as like, let's investigate people moving. If you're locked down, let's investigate people freeing. So when people see it, they feel something different from what they're feeling. Because everyone knows, like, you know, you have friends, relatives that went through depression, all of that stuff. So I was literally trying to be the antithesis to that. So that's where it all came from. And then it just snowballed into other things, into memory about Jamaica, my dad, all of this other stuff, yeah.
The next question is for Billie Lee. The question is, how do you find your footage that you use in your artwork? And you explained to us that it was from a trip that you did to North Korea. So I would like to ask it in a different way. How did it come to the process of putting the video together? What parts to choose from the video to display for this exhibition? And what does the process of collage montage mean to you in your work?
Yeah, I had a very fraught relationship to the footage because taking the footage alone was very risky. I had to hide the camera a lot of the times. I was only allowed, it was a very highly choreographed tour because it's a totalitarian regime and they don't want you to be going off on your own. It's not like, the travel itself is very constrained and so, you know, I think I was also testing my own privilege by having the camera on when probably I shouldn't have, and it, like there was that aspect, and then coming back from it. I mean, the whole the tour was just 5 days, and you know we could never go off on our own, so it was like very, very constrained and choreographed. Every stop, every site was directed, and so I also felt very limited as to how I could manipulate my camera, or you know what I could take footage of. And so when I came back to work with the footage, the footage itself didn't feel very intimate like other footage that I would take. You know, they didn't feel like subjective shots because it was just kind of sometimes like tucked, you know, in my arm, and they were kind of random and arbitrary. And so it took me a really long time to figure out like how I could work with it. And once I just ended up kind of using it much more intuitively, and at first I was trying to build a kind of narrative, but there was no narrative to build because the whole experience was very disillusioning. And so once I kind of let go, I think then layering and reassembling and just the process of montage itself, to me, spoke to just maybe was kind of a metaphor for history. History is just a montage of whatever remains or what gets saved or what gets preserved and gets made sense of again in the present, and there's just this constant revision happening, and that was the point when I felt like I could actually do something with the footage.
So the next question is for Lisa Iglesias. Can you talk more about collaborating with your family members, and how did that process start, and how has it evolved?
Well, I like to think of collaboration as just like being all these familial interactions, right? Like when you're cooking, I remember making, food, whether it was being told to or otherwise. It's like there's a lot of collaboration that families do together, right? And it's hard to sort of parse apart play and then like serious productivity, right? My sister, but on a sort of like level that we start naming things, my sister I have three sisters, but my sister who's a year younger, Janelle, we started working together in 2005 because we went to grad school and were very green and very much in the deep end and did not know what we were doing. And we were in different institutions, and we started to send work back and forth through the mail as a way to sort of support each other and finish each other's sentences and add to them. So we would send each other artworks back and forth through the mail. And it was like this like camaraderie, teamwork, support system, mutual aid system. At a certain point, then we started to work very much together officially, and because we wanted to really further explore that sort of static or dissonance or synchronicity between our practices and see what would happen. Like, what do we have in common? What do we really disagree about? We bicker and fight all the time, and that sort of conflict is interesting, and so we really mine that, and we kind of just unpack it, go through the pain, and at a certain point, we asked our mom to collaborate, and it started out in many kind of different ways that were very driven towards like ideas about translation or about utilitarian processes in the textile world, like with knitting and crochet and sewing. And that has really developed and become a sustained practice that now we like to think of it as a love letter to our mom, where it's really like talking about imaging people and representing them and interaction and creating legacy and breadcrumbs and all of that, right? And creating a constellation of associations where you can kind of get to know the bigger picture of who we are in relation to others. And so a lot of that all has to do like about the collaboration, whether it's whether it's implicit, deliberate, and really intentional or accidental. I feel like acknowledging that collaboration happens all the time. Like, for example, I feel like the work is collaborative through working with Priya, working with the preparator here, and all of the folks who are collaborating in this space, because I haven't seen it actually installed in this way. So the work then changes and grows new meaning through interacting with other humans and having it also on view with other artists, so that it continues to change in meaning through that way too. So I love this, that collaboration encompasses so much, and that it's political and emotional and familial. And then it's really, I think, no matter if I'm working by myself, it's always an acknowledgement that we exist in relationship to others.
Our next question is for Mark Guglielmo. I'm so sorry. Being formerly in the music industry, participating particularly in hip hop, how has that influenced the art that you make visually? What is similar and what is different? I apologize, the paper is...
No, you're doing a great job. You're both doing a great job. Well, hip hop it's really like, so it's all over the world, right? And it started in neighborhoods in New York City, where people who didn't have a voice just kind of made their voice really big through talking about their lives, their community. It was a movement that just started from the ground up, that kind of the power structure and the corporations were not paying attention to at all. So it shows you what can be done when regular people need an outlet, have something to say, and kind of band together community-wise and make something. musically, lyrically, dance, the graffiti, the painting, the murals. So for me, it's like proof positive that you can, with the people around you, without training, without a degree, without much money, you can make magic. And so for me, art has been similar. It's been, what can I do? And Kerry James Marshall talks a lot about this. He says that his work is made, his path is made because he wants other people to see that one person, no matter who you are, with some art materials, can make a powerful statement that stands for all time. And I think hip-hop has done that. And so for me, what I loved about hip-hop was that you could do the same thing. You could put in the work that it takes to master a craft as an MC, as a performer, as an engineer, as a producer. And through that, there's this liberation, there's this empowerment, there's this path that comes out of the ether. There's no manual, right? And so community is important because that's how I really learned everything, by working with other people who were better than me, by going to battles, by going to open mics, by really measuring myself up. And that's the other nice thing about hip hop is that there's this saying, it ain't where you're from, it's where you're at. It does matter where you're from, but if where you're at, it can be recognized by others who appreciate that art form as a high level, then you get respect no matter who you are. And so for me, I learned that in hip hop. It's like, you write your own ticket, but your ticket has to really shine. Otherwise, you will get on blast, that you will be shown where you need to grow, which is also helpful, because we're always, where's my weaknesses? How can I grow? What tools can I add to my arsenal? And so music was key for that for me.
Thank you. So these last set of questions are for everyone. The first one is, what is the toughest situation you ever had to deal with as an artist? And how did the outcome of that situation change your work?
Anyone want to start?
I can start. Think about this one. I mean, I remember graduating from college and looking at myself, knowing that the artist path is my path. And I had buddies who were going to interviews with J.P. Morgan, and I knew I couldn't do that because I would rather hang myself than work for J.P. Morgan, in all truth. I knew that I could not do that to myself, that I am better dead than to work there. And so this has been a 30-year, 35-year struggle, and I know it's a lifelong struggle, is that how do you get good? How do you put in the time and energy and space to become good at art, to become good at something, and still work and pay the bills? That balance in this world, in this society that values technology and smartphones and anything that's art, that's not art, basically, commercialism and things of that nature. How do you do that? It's like it's a riddle that very few can actually even approach. But then as you move forward and forward and forward, for me, it's been a realization that no matter how challenging that can be, the honoring of the calling is fulfilling on a level that as long as I'm healthy and I'm alive and the bills are paid, it's all good.
Would any of you like to add on?
It's hard to balance, I think, to keep on making when there are intense struggles. And I really try not to separate my different parts of my life, because I think that there's a lot of pressure to do that. Like, and I'm very much enmeshed in academia. It did not intend on doing that, but it happened. And there's a lot of pressure to keep family or sort of a creative playfulness contextualized within that sphere. All these spheres are sometimes seem antithetical to each other or at odds, and I try to just kind of weave them together. Which also means that when something is difficult happening in part of your life, it all affects all of it. And so I for a long time I thought like, oh yeah, no, I don't need, art making for me is not that place for me to heal. But actually I've realized lately that it totally is. And I need to get my head on straight sometimes. I need to be in a space where I can make things, touch material, and get into that framework of making. And then I suddenly, that my thought processes are making a lot more sense, and I'm a lot more of a happy, compassionate, to myself person. And so I think that that the art making kind of helps me. I mean, I keep on going back in my mind to Billy, you mentioned Gloria Anzaldúa, and this idea of like when you have trouble and pain, pushing through it. And I think that art can really help make that happen. And it's a total hustle to have many different jobs. Like if you're a caregiver, if you wind up teaching, or if you wind up doing something else, and all these different types of employments, and then also making artwork, it's a hard hustle. And yet they can also, it is possible to have them inform and help each other out. It's finding that balance that is a process. Yeah. Maybe there's another question.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I fought it for a long time. As I was saying, I compartmentalize stuff really well. So when I'm in the studio, this is like the studio. But the thing is, on the journey, as going to bring up the agony and the ecstasy, it's a great film about the life of Michelangelo. And I remember like 5 years ago, me and Priya watching it, and we just got totally inspired. Then they had the retrospective at the Met, and we saw it. I bought the thick book and read it through. And I was like, no, it's like, this is it. You go through the pain, and the pain makes the work. And it's just like having my first kid, and then it inspiring all the work. It's like you can't have one without the other. So that's the thing. I think the understanding that it's a journey, and it's a path that we all have to take. That's the biggest thing, because like as an artist, you're weird. You measure yourself against normal people, which you probably shouldn't do. I learned that pretty early on, because my dad used to be the one to take away all the art supplies and say, go read a book, because it's useless, right? So that's part of it too, to be like, see, I can do it, yeah. But my mom would give them back to me, So there's always this kind of, can you do it, should you do it? And to be honest with yourself and find the path and like walk it, that's literally the hardest thing, to be who you are inside,
I'll just quickly add that I graduated with my MFA right in the middle of the global financial crisis in 2008. Great time to graduate. And also my experience at like an elite art school like Yale, at that time, the combination of elements really made me want to take a break from art. And it actually, I really wanted to disidentify as an artist at that time. And it was a huge loss. So I took a 10-year break. And I ended up going into the museum field. I ended up going back to school. I was like searching for what I was going to do, And for some reason, in a very unexpected way, I got to come back to it, or maybe like it came back to me. And I always, like for the students in the room, for anybody, like art is not a linear process. It's okay to let go of it, and it's okay to, come back to it at a different time. It doesn't mean that you failed. Doesn't mean that you did something wrong. It's just it's like life. You can go in and out of it. Yeah.
Thank you. There's more questions.
Oh.
We're not done yet. What guidance or advice can you offer to students who desire to pursue art, or those who are graduating this academic year?
I'll pin my previous answer.
I mean, I would just say listen to the voices within you. You know, it's like our own intuition for me has been my greatest guide. You know, our intuition knows. It knows things we don't. And it will tell you if you just listen and recognize what's coming from deep within you and what's anxiety or programming, you know, so that's what I would say.
My main thing for an educator is that art studio and being a cultural producer is for you. It's that you have a place in it, and that when I was a student, I wish I had really thought about that more. I didn't have any illusions that I could be an artist or an art professor, because that looked like that was a fancy job for like dead white dudes. And so people with families and like complicated histories and BIPOC and LGBTQ plus individuals, like none of those artists were apparent to me. And now there's much more representation. I think that's more accessible knowledge. But I think it's also still, I think art studio can sometimes seem like a luxury. Whereas rather, if we see it as a necessity and that you trust that you have this tacit knowledge and experience and life knowledge, that you have this really important point of view that deserves to be shared and that's valid and that we need to hear it, I think that's a big thing that I wish I had known, that we have so much like, we can talk ourselves out of ideas or imposter syndrome. I think a big thing is even just thinking like that you deserve to be in the conversation.
Well, I agree with all of them. And I'd also say is, for the student that's graduating, I think it's highly advisable you sit down in a quiet space for like a week, just write whatever fancy you want, try to pin it down where you actually visualize your life, what you want for your life, and then seek a mentor. What a mentor is going to do for you is kind of concretize those kind of fantastical things. And then you'll be able to quickly decide, is it something you want or don't want? And I think that's the most important thing. Find somebody that kind of reflects that inner thing, you know, and see if you can talk to them, if you can get advice, and you kind of chart your way, because everyone's path is different, you know. But the more examples you get, the more real it will be. The more real it is in here, the more you'll be able to actualize it.
Okay, so the next question is, what is the primary takeaway that you want viewers to have from your work and this exhibition?
I'm going to think about this one.
I mean, for me, I hope that people will get their own creative license, like you were saying, that feel like I can join a conversation, I can say what I have to say in whatever medium that is. You know, we all have our own gifts. And so the world is so much better when each person is honoring their truth. And so if my work could plant seeds in people even unconsciously about, now I can hear that voice that's telling me I need to try this, I need to do this, or keep going with that, that would be an honor.
It's a big question. There's an artist I love, Francis Elise, and that he has a saying that's, and I don't remember it exactly, but the gist is that that sometimes poetry can be political, and that politics can be poetry. For me, that's really salient, and that like making things and interacting, and that this can be radical.
I want you to feel freedom. I want you to feel joy. I want you to, you know, go somewhere else, somewhere happy.
I guess for me, I'll add that there's a lot of possibility in small fragments, and that you could make something out of little shards of things, and you can make a world from it.
So at this moment, we are opening up the floor to any questions the audience might have, so feel free to ask away.
Who has a question? Anyone?
Really good question.
any questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, well, let's give a round of applause for the artists. And also Waika and Emily, who I think did a fantastic job. So, so that concludes our artist talk, but the artists will be sticking around for a little bit. So if any of you were too shy to ask a question, this is a really great opportunity for you to talk to them in person, ask them things, about anything. They're very accessible, and thank you so much for a really wonderful talk to all of you. I was on the edge of my seat listening to all of your answers, so thank you again, and thank you all for coming. So enjoy the night.